Thank you, Kenny. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this very special evening in honour of the wonderful Mr. Jim Boyce. Give Jim a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, there's some people from outside Northern Ireland who may not know who the feck I am. I am basically the Lionel Messi of local comedy, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Northern Ireland's answer to the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Me and Vladimir Zelensky are actually very, very similar. Vladimir Zelensky used to be a lawyer. I used to be a lawyer. Vladimir Zelensky had his own sitcom on Ukrainian TV. I have my own sitcom on Northern Ireland TV. Vladimir Zelensky is a fantastic war leader, and I'm from North Belfast. This is a bit odd, ladies and gentlemen, that for Jim Boyce and I rang Jim. Jim rang me the other day about the gig and he said, Tim, have you got a minute? And an hour later, Jim said, I want you to introduce a couple of things, but whatever you do, don't tell any jokes. He says, we've no time for jokes. And I said, Jim, you've asked me to not tell any jokes and you've put me in the room with Linfield people. Catch yourself on, my friend. Me not being allowed to tell jokes is like Donald Trump not being allowed to lie. Or Joe the Goal not being allowed to score goals, ladies and gentlemen. No, our friends from Linfield are here. They're very, very welcome. And I'm not going into detail about the 4th of May 2024 because we don't want to go there. But ladies and gentlemen, Jim genuinely said, I don't want you telling jokes and stuff. And I thought that was a ridiculous decision. So I went to Jared Lawler and he introduced VAR. And we'll get a decision next week. This is a very important evening for Jim. So looking around the room, I see a lot of very important and distinguished people couldn't make it. But we have lots of famous footballers and people to pay tribute. This is a measure of the esteem that which Jim has held. We do have some apologies tonight. Some people weren't able to make it. We have an apology from the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill. Couldn't make it tonight. Michelle was very upset. In fact, she wanted her invitation to tonight's gig delivered to her in Irish and also English so she could understand it. Jim Allister sent his apologies. He can't make it because he thought it might be fun. And the winner of the FIFA Peace Prize couldn't make it because he's too busy starting bucking wars. Can I say to Jim, first of all, what an honour it is here as a Cliftonville fan to be here and to work for feck all. What a joy it is. I mean, I don't make any money. I work for the BBC and they've no money left after they pay Stephen Nolan and Jerry Adams' damages. They've no... Oh, is that controversial or something? I'm so old I can remember when Jerry Adams genuinely wasn't in the rap. Yeah. But I'm delighted because I actually do a lot of gigs. I do a lot of gigs for charity and stuff like that. I'm doing one next week for the visually impaired, or as they're better known, Irish League referees. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Cliftonville fan. You're here to honour a great man who's been a loyal servant of Cliftonville for decades, ladies and gentlemen. This man, Jim Boyce, has been at more Cliftonville matches than anybody alive, ladies and gentlemen. And if you know what being a Cliftonville fan is, you can see what it's done to him. He's actually only 25 years old. But I'm confident this year he will see yet again Cliftonville win the Irish Cup. But I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, Jim is not only a friend of mine, he's been a great servant of Cliftonville, a great servant of local football, and I know him very well. He was on our podcast. He doesn't have a sectarian bone in his body, that man, but he does have a FIFA watch in his garage. Oh, come on, Jim, you knew that was coming. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get on to the one more slightly formal bit of the part, I've been a Cliftonville fan many years, and there are many Cliftonville legends in this room. The wonderful Jim Magilton is here. Mickey Donnelly, absolute legend, ladies and gentlemen. But there's one player who wants to come up and make a slight presentation, an ex-player who wants to make a presentation to Jim. He's an ex-player, ladies and gentlemen. I was a young Cliftonville fan, and I genuinely thought his real name was Marty Quinn will knock your bollocks in. But it is one of our great players from the 79 Cup final, one of our great players who won the league in 1998. Will you please welcome to the stage to make a special presentation to Jim, Mr. Marty Quinn! Jim, could you come up, please, too, as well, Jim? Jim, do you want to say a few words more?
Well, I'm just delighted to be here tonight and see so many faces. Excuse me if I don't have the names, but delighted to be here. And what can I say about Jim Boyce? An absolute legend and a lovely man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate your coming.
Marty, you need to hand over the buck and bowl, mate. It's your one job, you know. Turn round there so people can see it.
Got to tell a very quick story.
Oh, no.
I'm allowed to. It is my night. This man performed a miracle. First trophy, first league win for Cliftonville for 88 years. And Marty and I were great friends. Apart from being chairman and manager, we were great friends. And I remember at Christmas we were sitting, let's put it this way, I think we were second or third. And Marty and I would have gone down to Glenavon Hotel, had a chat, and I said, Marty, we have a chance of winning the league. And he said, do you honestly think so? I said, yeah, well, we need one more striker. And he said, I can get one. And he did get one. He got Harry McCourt from Ards, and we won the league. Isn't that right? And thank God, Marty, in 4 years, I think it was, from 1995 to 98, won 6 trophies at Cliftonville Football Club. Marty, you're a legend, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Marty Quinn, ladies and gentlemen. And that is Jim Boyce's version of a short story there, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, as I say, this is we're here for a very good cause as well. We're here to enjoy ourselves and to celebrate Jim and Jim's life, but also we are here for a serious cause as well. I'd like to introduce Jim's granddaughter now to say a few words. Will you please give a lovely warm welcome to Sophia Graham. Sophia.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'd like to say that on behalf of my granda. Obviously we're here to celebrate, Pa's success in football, but we're also here to recognise the fact that many people suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, I'm sure you realise that my Pa hasn't really got into what he's going to say tonight. He hasn't even scratched the surface. If there was a World Cup for talking, I'm sure Pa wouldn't have just won it, but he'd probably still be up giving his acceptance speech. Now, behind the Old Testament, behind every great man is an even greater woman. That stood still in our family with my nanny. While my Pa was off building his career in FIFA and football, my nanny stayed behind at home and helped look after his 2 young girls, my mummy and my auntie Lisa. And she also looked after the extended family and my granda's elderly father. My nanny, to this day, remains one of the nicest, kindest, and selfless women I've ever met. Now, at our table tonight, there's an empty seat because my nanny is unfortunately not able to join us as she's at home with her condition. My Uncle John also suffers from Alzheimer's, and I'm sure many of you in here tonight are impacted by it in some way, whether that's through family or through friends, because statistically, 1 in 3 people are diagnosed with some form of Alzheimer's or dementia within their lifetime. Now, thank you, Pa, and I hope you have a fantastic night. And if FIFA ever needs inspiration for a new referee kit, I'm sure you would give them great inspiration with your years of brightly coloured knitwear. I hope you all have a fantastic evening, and thank you so much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sophia Graham. Thank you. Well, Sophia, brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Sophia. This is an important cause. You can donate directly out the front there. There are some people from Alzheimer's. You can just literally put money in a bucket. For the wonderful prizes, there's the envelopes are on your table. Please put your money in and your table number and your name, and we will draw the ballot, I think, at the end of the dinner. So please do that now. And you can also buy this book for 10 quid as well. All the proceeds go to the Alzheimer's Society. So please, ladies and gentlemen, give generously. I now have my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce an absolute superstar to come and sing for you this evening. When I think of Irish League football and the Irish League footballers I know, the two words that go together are Irish League football and opera singing. We have an absolute legend, ladies and gentlemen, come to sing to you. This lady is an absolute superstar. Carla Parley is an internationally renowned, classically trained singer. Born in Mansfield, she attended theatre school before securing a scholarship to study the Royal Northern College of Music. She has had concerts for the Prince of Wales. She's sung with all the big major stars of the day. She's an absolute superstar. There's a superb, lovely video of Carly singing to Hazel in Jim and Hazel's house, which I would recommend you. It's a heart-bearer. It would make you cry, ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So here to sing for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, will you please give a massive, massive welcome to the wonderful Carly Parley!
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's always such a huge pleasure to be here in Belfast, and especially to celebrate this amazing gentleman, Jim Boyce, everybody. So it's an honour that Jim invited me to be able to share in this special celebration, and I've picked out, hopefully, a few of Jim's favourites, including this next classic, which you may notice the odd lyric change.
Jimmy boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Jimmy boy, we love you so. And when you come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I will be. Please come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me, and I shall hear the soft you tread above me, and all my tears the warmer sweet of me. For you'll be there to tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to
Thank you very much. This next song it's a song that I've been wanting to perform for so long. So I thought this evening, amongst friends, it would be the right opportunity. So this is the Leonard Cohen classic, and I hope you enjoy my interpretation.
Now I've heard there was a secret chord that
David played and he pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this, the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair, she broke your throne, she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You say I took the name in vain. I don't even know the name, but if I did, well, really, what's it to you? There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter what you heard, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I did my best, it wasn't much. I told the truth, but I tried to touch. I told the truth, I didn't come to fool you. And even though before the Lord, with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear one more time for the absolutely fantastic Miss Carly Paola. Come on. Big round of applause. Absolutely super. Yeah. Thank you, Carly. How about that, ladies and gentlemen, eh?
I'm trying to hold my breath. Let it stay this way. Can't let this moment end. You've set off a dream in me, getting louder now.
'cause darling, without you, all the shine of 1,000 spotlights, all the stars we steal from the night sky will never be enough, never be enough. Towers of gold are still too little. These hands could hold the world, but it'll never be enough, never be enough.
What do you think of the dress? Good dress? This next song was actually composed by my musical director. So her dad came from Northern Ireland, and she wrote this song a few years back in tribute to him. And it just felt the perfect addition to tonight's programme, celebrating, of course, Jim and some of the amazing memories I've made here.
There are long, winding roads filled with beauty. There are fields and ancient stones and towns between. There are people who greet you with friendship and with warmth. There are mountains and stones with depths unseen. Oh, the glens, the rugged coasts, the giant's causeway. Oh, sleep down at Carrick furthest too. There are songs and tales full of myths and full of dreams. All its majesty a land strong and true. Oh, Northern Ireland, you're forever in our hearts. Always will be there, even when we are apart. return to you will know that we are
This next song really needs no introduction. I'd say it's one of the most beautiful anthems ever written.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk When you walk through the storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Time and again, I'm trying to say, walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear one more time. The fantastic Miss Carly Pioli. Fantastic.
I actually did have one more song to sing this evening, but I mean, ideally, this next song, it really should be a duet. Now I've got a problem. I've looked around, I know a few faces. I thought about David Campbell, but I've heard him sing. I wouldn't want to submit any of you to that. So, Jim, would you do me the honour of joining me in song this evening?
This young lady sings with Andrea Bocelli, Placido Domingo, And now Jim Boyce. What more can I ask for?
Well,
What more can I ask for?
you're better than any of them. Are you ready for this?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Moon river, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday.
Oh, dream maker, you heart breaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way.
Two drifters off to see the world.
There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend. My huckleberry friend, Moon River and me.
Moon river, wider than a mile,
There's such
crossing
a
you in
lovely
style
someday. Oh, dream maker, breaker, wherever I'm going your way.
Two drifters off to see the world.
There's such a lot of world to see.
We're after
The same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend.
my huckleberry friend.
Moon River and me.
And Jim Boyce.
The one and only Mr. Jim Boyce, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Carly Pioli. Come on, let's hear it for them. Fantastic.
And now the moment we've all been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. I'm at a table of sports journalists, but, you know, they didn't put me with the number one sports journalist in Northern Ireland because he wasn't available. But here's Joel Taggart. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joel Taggart today.
What a lovely welcome. Yeah, we all know that Stephen Beacon was at that table, so that's why Tim wasn't there. A big thanks to Da, Ulster's favourite Provo. Thank you very much, Da. It's great to have you here. We're going to do a little bit of wandering down memory lane with Jimmy after his Kylie and Jason performance. Fantastic. There's only... I was Bigo's gag. There's only one thing I can say, Jim, after that musical performance. Jackie Fullerton will be absolutely raging. He'd be absolutely furious. So Jim had said to me about some of the people who were here, and maybe we'd chat to some of them, hear some stories. And then Jim suggested that for this section, maybe we'd spend maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes. But Jim would be with me, so that should give the other guests about 8 minutes between them. So I'm glad somebody at that table enjoyed that joke. You can come back anytime, Madam. Well done. Thank you very much. So we're going to do that now. Jim, would you like to join me on stage for This Is Your Footballing Life? Obviously, that music, Jim, for all the younger members of the audience, they will all remember This Is Your Life. We couldn't afford a red book, so it's in the car. So I've kept this microphone for us, Jim, because this is effectively the choke chain, in case you drift off, because we want to hear from some of these other people, these guests, and they're all very special people in terms of your life. So first of all, happy birthday, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Birthday yesterday. I wasn't going to say 82, but you're happy. So you put so much into this night yourself, so much hard work, Jim. But why did tonight mean so much to you, and what does it mean to see it all come together and everybody in the room?
Well, first of all, Joel, it really started because of two young boys who are my guests tonight. They invited me down to Celtic Boys Clubs in Downpatrick to present awards to the under-8s to under-13s. And I got a beautiful email from them the following day thanking me for coming down. I called into this hotel on the way back because my wife, as someone comes in between 5 and 7, I called in for a coffee. And I spoke to Eamon Elliott, who's a manager of the hotel, who's Jim Magilton's best friend, actually. And I said to him, Jim's also a very good friend of mine because we would go out for lunch. And I said, with all being well, start of next season, and remember this was June, it would be my 75th year at Cliftonville Football Club. And he looked at me and he said, what? And I said, yeah, I was ball boy at 7, and I'm now the club patron, and it's been 75 wonderful years. It's had its ups, it's had its downs, but I wouldn't have been anywhere else. And he said to me, you should have a dinner. Now, I'll be honest, I had no intention of having a dinner. But I went home that night and I thought of Hazel, and I thought, my sister's husband, unfortunately, is in a home at the moment with this dreadful disease as well. That night, plus the following morning, I sort of thought about it, and I rang Jim. And Jim rang Eamon, and he said, Eamon wants to speak to you. And I came up, saw Eamon. He said he would give me this hotel, this room, completely free of charge. And I thought, why not have a go and try and do something for what is a wonderful cause and is a terrible disease? And I just have to say from the very bottom of my heart, as they've said in that brochure, thank you very much for everybody. I think, and I can honestly say this, out of everybody who was asked to come, I think there was no more than maybe 9 or 10 people who, obviously for very good reasons, are not here tonight. There's people who have come from Malta. Sean Strang has come from Australia. And there's people who have come from the UK, many of my friends from the UK, from UEFA, and from Scotland, from Wales, and really, as I say, from the bottom of my heart, a very sincere thanks to everyone. I have to say before we start, Joel, that without my loving family, without my loving daughters and the grandchildren, who allow me to still have, obviously, a part of my life, mainly in Northern Ireland now with Cliftonville. But thanks to them, thanks to the other people, the carers who come into the house, Hazel is staying at home. She's very content at the moment in home, and long may that happen, because as far as I'm concerned, she'll stay at home until I get to the stage where I can't manage it anymore. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Most revealing part of that answer, Jim, was that Jim Magilton has friends, which is... Anyway, let's... I love you, Jim, you know. So, that was very much from the heart. Let's start then, Jim, with the personal touch. Put your hands together for our first two guests tonight. Billy Peacock, and Jerry McCollum. Put your hands together. So we're on sky blue and yellow microphones for our first two guests. I mean, first of all, Billy, take me back to when you first met Jimmy Boyce and why it's so important for you to be here tonight.
Well, I knew Jimmy Boyce before he was famous. Jim Boyce lived on the Upper Old Park Road, and I lived in the district of Jomount. And those days, Jomount Park was a very long and wide street. There were no cars, no television, nothing. And people had little or no money. So the street was essentially your playground. So if you had a tennis ball, you were in business. You could play morning, noon, or night. And that's exactly what we did. So in 1954, we decided to form a football club. So we dug gardens, cut hedges, amounted some money towards the end, and a man called Mr. Jackson went down to Thornton's in Donegal Place, and he bought a set of jerseys and a set of numbers. So we come back, we were given a jersey and a number, and your mother had to sew the number onto the jersey. That's the sort of days it were. So we also needed to give the club a name. And so a mutual friend of ours, Alistair Henderson, followed the fortunes of West Bromwich Albion. And in 1954, West Bromwich Albion won the FA Cup, beating Preston North End 3-2. So we adopted the name Jomount Albion. So things were sitting nicely, but we didn't have a goalkeeper. So we took a dander over to Ballystone playing fields to watch some of the junior teams. And lo and behold, here was this sturdy figure between the sticks. He was sporting a blue and amber shirt, which was the colours of his alma mater, Belfast High School. In those days, they were in Glenravel Street. So he looked like a fairly competent individual. I suppose in modern day parlance you would have called him a shot stopper. So we took him on board. Now, also note, we played football throughout the city. And most of the time, there weren't any changing rooms. You were behind a hedge. You were trying to be discreet. So on this particular evening, or this particular morning rather, we were playing a team called Breda Swifts. So we headed up the St. Field Road, up Newton Park, and lo and behold, there was a football pitch in the middle of nowhere. And beside this football pitch, there was a bus, a double-decker bus, a ramshackle, I might add. And we met the opposing team, and he says, right, Billy, it's like this. The home team changes downstairs, and you guys are upstairs. And that was the first changing rooms we ever had. So we went on to draw 5 each with them. And
he conceded 5, did he?
Jim Boyce got the back seat.
Well, so much of what we're going to hear about, Jim, people know, you know, it's the public face of what you do as a president or a vice president or a committee member in so many aspects of football. But Jerry, you want to tell us tonight about maybe some of the things that Jim did in his role that maybe were unseen, but they meant so much to you and to your family, and I'm sure there are many other people out there who Jim has done things for, maybe in a similar way.
Yeah, well, Jim and I met, it's hard to believe, Jim, 50 years ago. We were both in the life and pensions industry. You were manager of Sun Life. I was in Maguire Insurances, if you remember that, and ended up broking and banker for many years. But even though that was Jim's real job, there's a Cliftonville story. And I can't remember the year, Jim, but it's at least 35 years ago. Cliftonville were in very, very serious financial trouble, about to fold, and they needed support. And I was part of the Life and Pensions Committee, and we had a meeting, and we knew, first of all, that the whole life and pensions industry, the high regard they had for Jim Boyce, but more than that, we knew what Cliftonville meant to him. And even though most of us were Glentoran and Linfield fans, the Life and Pension Society made a donation that time to Cliftonville. But as you know, Joel, as you say, I have a lovely story to get through in about 2 minutes. And it's an example of Jim and the wonderful football career that he had. He always still thought about and supported others. And for us, it was our late son, Christopher. And if you look at the programme tonight, Jim, I have to thank you so much for including the picture of you and Christopher. It's Jim visiting a young boy in the city hospital, and that was our son, Christopher. I think at that time, if I just say, maybe I should just say quickly, Christopher, when he was age 5 in 1989, he was diagnosed with a life progressive limited disability. He started to use a wheelchair at age 8, and he passed away in 2001, age 16. But from the very first day, Jim Boyce took Christopher under his wing. And for the next 8 or 9 years, your support to Christopher, Jim, was exceptional. You never let it forgot him in that sense. And as I say, the picture tonight in the programme is wonderful, but I always love the day that Christopher and I were at a Northern Ireland match, and he was in the old disabled inn in the old Windsor Park in the mid-90s. And you can imagine for a young boy like Christopher, you're at a Northern Ireland game, and the president of the IFA still finds the time to come all the way outside and come and see you and say hello. And that was a lovely memory at that time. And another one, Jim, you maybe remember, Jim used to send me goodie bags down to my office. When he was on his travels, he would pick up football pennants and pin badges and items like that. Watches? And no watches. We never got... I'm
glad Jim mentioned the watches.
Yeah, that was before the watches, I think. And
better to get it out early, Jim. I agree.
But I have to also say some very good autographs as well. But one fantastic story is, if you remember, Jim's company were taken over by AXA, who were the sponsors of the FA Cup. And Jim got his office to phone me one day to say the cup was in their office. Would I like to bring Christopher down to see it? And I said Christopher's in the city hospital. So you can just imagine, everyone, instead of Christopher going to see the FA Cup, Jim Boyce organised for the FA Cup to go up and see Christopher in the city hospital. And I can just imagine Christopher. He was in a side room, and I can imagine his face when the guy stood at the door of the FA Cup. It's a wonderful day, lots of photos. Half the staff and patients in the city hospital were outside Christopher's room, waiting to get a photo with the cup. But the most important part that day was Man United won the treble that year. And Christopher used to love telling people, Jim, that he had been Man United's lucky omen, because thanks to Jim Boyce, he had touched the FA Cup at that time. But I'm going to go to June 96, and I have to rush through this. When Jim, again, thinking of Christopher, but he became the catalyst of Christopher having the most special last 5 years of his life, thanks to Jim. David Campbell was launching his soccer school, along with Lorraine, of course, in Europa. Lee Sharp was their guest. Jim phoned me up to say, would Christopher like to meet Lee Sharp? So Christopher and I went down. It was a fabulous day. The event was great. And Christopher was lucky to sit beside Lee Sharp later on. And I think Lorraine will agree with me, it was a laugh a minute. And Lee, so much so that Lee Sharp phoned Sir Alex's secretary, Lynn Laffin, and booked Christopher tickets in the disabled end at Old Trafford for the first home match of the season, but his first ever visit to Old Trafford. More than that, Lee Sharp invited Christopher down to the Cliff to meet all the players. 3 days before we got there, Man United transferred Lee Sharp to Leeds United, and we never saw him. But a very good friend of mine, when we arrived in Manchester, and I have to mention this, Jim, that good friend, both him and his wife, are in a care home in England with Alzheimer's. But John told me to phone the Cliff, which I did, and a Jimmy Curran answered the phone. And I'm glad to say I was speaking to David Jeffrey earlier, and I know David Healy's here, and of course David Gill, and I think they'll all know who Jimmy Curran was. He was at the club for many years, part of the class in '92, but was now in the first team as an assistant physio. So Jimmy Curran brought Christopher down to the Cliff that week. He got seeing, meeting all the players, getting his photographs. But just like you, Jim, Jimmy Curran didn't let go. And for the next 5 years, he made Christopher's life as special as ever could be. I haven't time to tell it tonight. Although that poster that you saw, and what a magnificent amount, thanks very much to the person for that poster. That's just one of dozens and dozens of posters that Christopher was sent by Man United. If I can just say one quick example of summing up those 5 years was he had a lot of wheelchair problems, and one day he got a cheque from Jimmy Curran signed by Roy Keane and Gary Neville for £1,000 to go towards getting Christopher a new powered wheelchair. And to sum up that, the following year in 2000, Sir Alex invited Christopher to visit Carrington, the new training ground. Another unforgettable day, met all the players, even had lunch with some of the players in the players' canteen. The point of telling you all that tonight is none of that would have happened if it wasn't for Jim Boyce. Jim Boyce was the catalyst because he thought of Christopher all those years ago, and he thought of him at that time with Lee Sharp. And I must also add in, he was also the catalyst for Christopher to meet David Campbell and Lorraine Sass, whose love, friendship and support to Christopher over those 5 years, as Jim knows, was immense. And just for me to finish, I hope I haven't taken too much time, Joe, but I have to say this. When Christopher passed away, his teachers at Mitchell House told us that he was known as the ABCD boy. He was amazing, he was brave, he was courageous, he was determined. And Jim, Geraldine and I would just like to say to you tonight that we know for Christopher, you were his ABCD man. You were awesome for him. You were brilliant to him. You cared about him. And most of all, as everybody here knows anyway, you were totally dependable. You never let him down. And it's an honour for Geraldine and me to be here on this special night for a very special person.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry McCollum and Billy Peacock.
Okay, I didn't get saying very much. Well, I would just give me a minute.
A minute.
Okay.
You can tell George Jones outside.
Well, no jokes. I have known this man for over 7 decades, and I just want to conclude tonight and quote a man who used to give all sorts of sayings. And this saying resonated with me. And it says that in life, try not to be a man of success, rather a man of value. And tonight, I declare Jim Boyce a man of value.
Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Peacock and Jerry McCollum. So, Jim, as we know, Cliftonville was your club. You, of course, were there as ball boy, who became club chairman, even club patron now. But as chairman, we all remember you standing beside that little wall, or sitting on that little wall with your sheepskin coat, even when some referees tried to move you. They weren't, no. But to acknowledge that association with the Reds tonight, joining us on stage, one that you've already mentioned, joining us all the way from Australia to be here tonight, former Cliftonville icon Sean Strang, and also a former chairman at the club who's now the CEO of the Northern Ireland Football League, Gerard Lawler. Take one of those, Jim, there. Till we get 3 up at one time. Thank goodness Gerard Lawler didn't slip coming up there. I thought we'd have needed a VAR check. That's sorry, Gerard. So, Sean, I have to ask you, what an effort you've made to be here. Why did you want to be here for this man tonight?
Well, Jim's done a terrible amount for me over my career. He looked after me so well. He introduced me to a family, Cliftonville Football Club. I couldn't have wished for anything else. It was coming from Scotland, playing where I was. Jim introduced me to a tremendous team, beautiful people, and I enjoyed my time thoroughly.
You got to play in an amazing game as well that Jim, I think, helped organise, which was a friendly against the South Korean Olympic team before they headed off to Atlanta in 1996. Only Jim Boyce could waltz in the mid-90s to Solitude and say to Marty Quinn, I've got you a warm-up match for a European game. The South Korean Olympic team is coming to play at Solitude.
Well, for me, that was the worst thing Jim could have done because we were chasing shadows all night.
And whenever you think of your time at Solitude and at Cliftonville, is it hard to think of it without Jim Boyce and those memories?
It is. Jim was an integral part of, I think, the lead up to Cliftonville getting the league championship win, which was hugely important. And hats off to Marty Quinn and the boys for doing so.
Jared, as a young supporter, and you know you're going to games, you know Jim Boyce always seemed to be there, whether it was powder lemon or powder pink or powder blue or powder green. I mean, he was unmissable in those, as was mentioned earlier, the knitwear or the dazzling jackets for which he was famous.
Yeah, Joel, I suppose Jimmy was, I'll always say, so approachable. And I genuinely, I started off in a supporters club, running buses, trying to see where the club could go in the future. And, you know, probably when so many people in those days of clubs, they were locked away, they turned up for 2 hours on a Saturday. Jimmy was always there. You could ring the office. Sometimes you rang him on a payphone, it cost you a few quid. But Jim was always so approachable, even to this day.
And what do you remember? Like, what do you see now as a football administrator, Jared, that you would have, you know, when you think back, you look at Jim when he was in a role as an administrator. Are there bits of him that you take into how you handle that administration on a daily basis?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. The Jim, as the guy said, has values. He has been to the height of world football. I'm lucky that at the moment, as much as my NIFL role, I do some work for UEFA. But no matter where I go, anywhere in Europe, Jim's name comes up. The minute you say you're from Northern Ireland, the first thing you get back, do you know Jim Boyce? And I'm like, yeah, so no matter where I go, Jim and I normally end up exchanging photos or texts to say, look who I'm with tonight. But nobody will ever say a bad word about him. And I think the ambassador that he has been for Cliftonville and for Northern Ireland football is amazing.
What do you want to say about these two boys, Jim?
What I want to say is, as far as Sean was concerned, I picked him up at the airport, took him to matches. He was a super player. He was very highly thought of at Cliftonville Football Club. As far as Jared's concerned, we're still to this day very close friends. He'd done a phenomenal job as chairman of Cliftonville Football Club, and I think Cliftonville Football Club wouldn't be where it is today without Jared. I hope maybe I started it in some way. You know, Marty Quinn, and some people forget this, but we won the 6-a-sides at the Dundonald Ice Bowl. And I remember saying to Marty, this is only a 6-a-sides, but I just have a feeling it's a start of something. The following year we won the Gold Cup. The following year we won the County Antrim Shield. The year after that we won the league, and then we won the County Antrim Shield again. And then I had to step down as chairman of Cliftonville because of the conflicts with the IFA, obviously. We then won the Charity Shield when we beat Glentoran. But Marty Quinn won 6 trophies in a period of 4 years at Cliftonville Football Club. And as I say, Jared then, you know, he took over shortly afterwards. With Tommy Breslin, who, let's be honest about it, he was one of the nicest men that you could ever meet. What a manager. But he had players, you know, what I would say, and I'll say this very briefly, Cliftonville had players who wanted to play for the shirt. They had players who wanted to play for Cliftonville Football Club. A lot of them are here tonight. nowadays players are coming in, they're coming out. The money in the game is just phenomenal. But I think both Marty's team and Tommy's teams was won by players who wanted to play for Cliftonville Football Club. And Jared was a great ambassador for the club. He still is, and he's done a wonderful job as the CEO of the Football League, and long may it continue.
Sean, just quickly, what are you up to now? What's life for you like in Australia? Feeding goats, that's very
better
harsh.
suntan than me anyway.
I'm a farmer. Yeah, so I still run a dental business in Australia, and I've bought acreage and I'm doing a farm and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Well, listen.
And I'm still waiting on my signing on fee from Jim.
Well, there's a queue outside. Sean,
there's a few.
Thanks for coming. It's so good of you to make the effort to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Strang and Jared Lawler. So, of course, Jim mentioning the trials at the IFA. We're not going there tonight, Jim. I was going to... I thought we could have had like a special IFA episode of The Traders. We could have had everybody at the one table, Jim. David Martin.
I've no comment to make on it.
Hardwells. Sorry, no. Anyway, that'd be great TV, wouldn't it? Over the years, Jim, because of your association with Cliftonville and the fact that you barely missed a match whenever it was feasible at all, it brought you great friendships across other clubs and, of course, in the media. So we're going to reflect on that now. Put your hands together for the former Linfield and Ballymena United manager David Jeffrey, Stephen Beacom, the chief sports writer at the Belfast Telegraph, and the current IFA vice president, Colin McKendry. Colin's coming from the back there. David, one story I think maybe we'll start with you. I mean, you were the Linfield manager that led Linfield back to solitude in, November 1998. The first time in 28 years that Linfield had been back to solitude. 11 o'clock kickoff. Tim McCann, who's here tonight, I think scored that day. Winky Murphy also scored in a 1-1 draw. But that was a seismic moment, wasn't it, in the local game? And, you know, I'm sure a proud day for Jim as well, as we all know, that Linfield were able to come back to solitude.
It was massive, Joel. Sport is a wonderful way, and particularly football, of bringing people together. And thank God, and I say it with all reverence, that brought some normality back. I'll never forget, I don't speak Irish, but there was a lovely... I was going to say Chucky Arla, but... Well, it was a thousand welcomes, and it was absolutely a tremendous day, much bigger than the game. And the funny thing about it, we had a gentleman called Ken McCabe, you will remember, and he was actually the part of the Linfield staff. And I will never forget how humble he always was. And when he went to Cliftonville that day, he was treated like an absolute superstar. Such was his worth to the club when he had played. So it was a wonderful, wonderful day, Joel. And thankfully, that was the beginning of bringing some normality back to football in Northern Ireland.
I mean, everybody knows, Stephen, you know, the Boyce the Voice. That was Jimmy's nickname, you know. But Malcolm Brodie, of course, came up with Boyce the Voice. But Jim Boyce was the voice of football for many years at a time when football didn't have a lot of friends, and a lot of people might not have been listening.
That's right, Joel. Boyce the Voice is probably the most accurate nickname of all time, because Jim Boyce has never been lost for words. And people in the media, there's a great bunch of journalists there right beside us. We always appreciated that, because Northern Ireland, as we all know, is a complex place. And sometimes football got drawn into that, sadly. And Jim Boyce was always there at the end of a phone, at the end of a camera, or if you were interviewing him on radio. And Jim would always come up with the right words that were needed at that time, sensible words but also with a sense of fun as well on occasions. Sometimes you've got to have a laugh in Northern Ireland football, otherwise you'd be crying. Look at David Healy, for example. I'm only joking, David. Well done with that League Cup win. But
how to win friends, big away.
But Jim was just like, he was the first guy you would go to, because you knew that he would answer the call. And I think it is very telling here tonight, Joel, that you have got an Oscar winner, you've got an Olympic champion, the great
Lady
Mary Peters.
Yes.
You've got You've got the greatest goalkeeper of all time, and Pat Jennings here. You've got the boys from '98 down there. What a side that was. They've all come together for Jim Boyce because there's so much respect for this man, and he has done a world of good for football, for sport in Northern Ireland. And I should also mention Neil Lennon has come over for this, which shows you, Lenny's a busy man, a class act, and he has taken the time to come over for this. So it just shows you the esteem that Jim is held in.
It's good of you to give away the surprise element of one of our guests later, Stephen, but thanks for that. Colin, what would you say about this man? If somebody walked up in the street and said to you, what do you make of that fella, Jimmy Boyce? What would you say about Jim Boyce from your experience?
Joel, the first thing I would say, it's an honour and a privilege to be here speaking as a Vice President of the Irish Football Association. Jim's long distinguished career, not only at the Irish Football Association, but throughout FIFA as a Vice President, is, I think George already alluded to what I was going to say in relation to, regardless where I go representing the association, people come up to me and always say to me, what about Boise? How's Boise? And they do take photographs, and I send them to Jim and said, there's a guy here looking for you. Do you know this guy? This type of thing here. And whenever Jim first mentioned that this was, dinner was taking place, I can tell you, I was always going to be here. And if I'd anything to say about Jim Boyce, I would say he's a willing man whenever I would ask him, talk to him about anything to do with football. And great advice is always given by Jim. And there are a number of other past presents in the room here that would like to give me the same advice.
Well, listen, we appreciate you making time to be here tonight and sharing your thoughts on why it was so important to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, Colin McKendry, Stephen Bigham, and David Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Billy. Thank you very much.
Yes, Jim, a quick word from Jim.
No, I would like to thank the three boys for the remarks they've made. I have always believed that if you are a leader, that you've got to at least be open and be honest, be transparent. People may not agree with what you say, but I don't believe in this saying that's going on at the minute, a spokesman says or a representative said. I think if you want to be in a position of leadership, you have to be open, you have to be honest. People can disagree with you. They disagreed with me many times, but the thing is, you don't run away from them. And I think the sad part about some aspects of football, and I would give Gerard the highest praise for being the chief executive of NIFL at the minute, because he's prepared to speak, he's prepared to show leadership, and people may not always agree with him, but at least they know who said it. I'm sad, but there's another organisation who, for some reason, don't have that aplomb, if that's the right word. It's always a spokesman said or a representative said, and I'm sorry, but I believe that that's what's lacking at the moment with a certain high office in Irish football.
Thank you, Jim. So sports administration, of course, took you to the corridors of power in in Europe and, of course, the world with FIFA. So, also joining us tonight, put your hands together for David Gill, who succeeded Jim as FIFA Vice President, also a former UEFA Vice President, and, of course, was Chief Executive of Manchester United, and Sir David Richards, former Chairman of the Premier League. Sir David, memories of this man and maybe how you first met or were introduced?
That light's bright. 1997, we came to Ireland to the International Board. It was the first time I'd met Jim. And we stood in the bar after. Jim might not remember this. And I hadn't really spoke to him. And he said to me, "Can you get a Premier League club to come and play my club here?" It's a bit much.
Get the old microphone up there, Sir
Sorry,
David. Yeah, yep.
Sorry. I'll try. Had a word with one or two clubs, and a great friend of ours who became a great friend, Phil Garside from Bolton, said, yeah, we'll come over. A few weeks later, I was in the office, and Roz, our secretary, came to me and she said, "I've got Mr. Jim Boyce on the phone. He wants to come and see you." So I said, "Yeah, fine." A couple of weeks later, Jim turns up. And bear in mind, I'd only known him for 6 months. And he gave me this story about how he wanted to develop kids in football up to the age from 8 to 21. And then he said to me, "I'm looking for the finance to do it." And I said, "Okay, Jim, I'll see what I can do." And I got Mike Foster, our director of football, and Javid Khan, our finance director, to tell me how much it would cost a year to do this. And I rang Jim up and I said, "I can do it, Jim." And he said, How much? I said, 200,000 a year for 5 years. And he came back to see me. And it just developed from there. I did it for 5 years. And I rang him up and I said, "Jim, we'll do it for another 5 years." And it went on and on. But during that time, they were saying to me, the directors, "Are you sure this bloke's going to develop football?" And I just said, "It's Jim Boyce." And he'll do it. And he did.
David Gill, we know that Jim went off and he goes to what's described as the corridors of football power. But what was it about Jim that made him succeed in those corridors? What was it about Jim that brought all these friendships and influence?
I'll have to get back to you on that one, Joel. No, seriously, I met Jim when I was at UEFA and FIFA, and I think what he did was, as you can tell from what's been said tonight and people who know him, he's a people person. He's interested, he works hard, he gets to know people. So I think all those aspects, people took to him and listened to him, and also then respected his opinion because of his longevity in the game, which we talked about. He knew about club football in Northern Ireland, he knew about the association. So that's very, very important, and I think people respected that. But he didn't just come in and, try and fly a kite. He actually knew what he was talking about. So, it was a great relationship, and I had so much fun with him. And I think it was a lovely evening, Alzheimer's, and I think Jim's granddaughter spoke very, very eloquently about Hazel and Vicky and I. We had a lovely evenings with Jim. We had lovely evenings with Jim and Hazel at these do's, and I think our wives are very important. If you're in football, it's a very sort of masculine game. Well, it's women play, I understand that, but it's a very masculine game at that level. And I think you forget about the support you get at home and all of that. And I think Jim had that, and it allowed him to do all the travelling. And I think that what he did was and to Dave's point, he was the chairman of the Youth and Amateur Football Committee at UEFA for many, many years. And it's not easy getting to places from Northern Ireland to UEFA and around. And he always took that on, and he travelled extensively, and he took his responsibilities very seriously. So I think in football, as someone said earlier, it's not about, you're there, I'm the big I am. He actually walked the walk, he talked the talk, and he did the work. And I think that's what gets respected in football. And Jim, for me, epitomises that.
And Sir David, just quickly to sum up this particular section, why was it so important for you to want to be here tonight?
Well, over the years, me and Jim have become great friends. Talk to one another on the phone. He helped me through FIFA on the international board, UEFA. Jim were always there for me, and I had to be here for him tonight.
Beautifully put, if you don't mind me saying so.
And I'll be very, very honest. Everybody in this room probably knows that Northern Ireland would never have had an under-21 team playing in a European competition if it hadn't have been for David Richards. I went and saw him, and there were people in the IFA at that time who said, no, too much money, don't even think about it. If they're good enough, they get in the senior team. I never had that attitude. I thought we needed to have an under-21 team in Europe. I went and saw Sir David, and we got 200,000, as he said, a year. 170,000 of that went towards putting an under-21 team in Europe for the first time. Then 10,000 went to the boys' clubs, 10,000 went to women's, who at that time had to go out and buy their own boots and their own jerseys. There was no money, and the other 10,000 went to the boys' clubs. So the schools, the boys' clubs, really owe a debt of gratitude. One of the things, and I don't mind being open and honest about this, Joel, one of the things that annoyed me was I understood from Gerard, from a phone call from Gerard, that Sir David, before he retired, someone from the IFA went and saw him. I won't mention the name. But Sir David increased that money. When I finished as president of the IFA, I didn't want any annoyance about it. I rang Sir David and I said, look, would you do me a favour? Would you make sure the money that comes to the IFA would continue? And he said, yes, Jim, for you, I will do that. Now, I got a phone call from Gerard, I think 2 years ago, and I subsequently found out that money was uplifted 6 months before Sir David retired from 200,000 a year to $250,000 a year. And the Irish Football Association have been getting, that's in excess, I think, of £6 million since I saw him in 1998. That's how much that man owes to the IFA.
David Gill and Sir David Richards, thank you both very much. We are running a little bit late, so we're all right for time, said Jim. Okay, Jim's in charge. So, friendships that have been built at UEFA, and we're going to quickly hear just a message or two from two people who are here tonight, and those friendships were built through Jim's time at UEFA. Put your hands together for Noel Mooney, Facilities Director at UEFA for many years, who's currently the CEO of the Football Association of Wales, and Ludovico McAuliffe, who's the former Vice President of the Maltese FA for nearly 30 years. Ludovico, the microphone. I'm just wondering what you would like to say to Jim on his big night, because we know many of us who have travelled in the media. Jim has had a long association and friendship with Malta and the FA.
Yes. And we also have a good relationship with him, I hope. Certainly for me, it was a privilege and a pleasure getting to know him and working with him. We worked together in the UEFA Under Youth Committee for many years. He was the chairman and I was a member of the committee. But also, I had met him through tournaments of under 17, which were organized by WAVE. And one thing which in Malta I have always kept in mind, it was with his help, and he knows that when I was there, and he was chairman of the youth committee, that we got in 2018 to hold, UEFA allocated to us the under 17 tournament, the yearly tournament. That was the first time which Malta had been to, and it was something for us. And Jim helped us a lot. As I told you, I feel privileged and to have met Jim and to have worked with him for these years. I have learned a lot from him. I always admired his way of working and of solving problems when we had them. It was always, we had problems because you always have problems in football.
Yes.
But he had so much knowledge, and I've learned a lot from him.
A problem solver. He was good at solving the problems.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
He really was. We had problems. I was young. Younger than him.
Well, Jim used to be young as well. Now, to be fair, we go back a few years. But I always remember, Jim, Malta was the first away game I ever worked at was in Malta, and I went to the hotel, the team hotel, and we went in the first night, and Sammy McElroy was the manager, and we went in, and I said everybody was there, and you were conspicuous by your absence, and I said, "Where's Jim?" And he said, he says, Joe Mifsud, who is the president of the Maltese FA, his daughter's getting married, and Jim has gone to represent the association. So, at which point, Sammy Mac leans over to me and he says, "I bet you any money he makes a speech." So, 2 minutes later, the door opens, and Jim walks in and announces, "I've just been to the wedding of the daughter of Joe Mifsud, the president of the..." Yes. I made a speech on behalf of the association. Sammy leant over and said, "I told you he'd make a speech." You have probably know what before you entered the corridors of power, you had probably heard about Jim Boyce, and then all of a sudden, maybe for the first time, you meet him. What sort of a rep did Jim have before the initial meeting?
Yeah, first of all, what a gorgeous evening, by the way, a fabulous night to be here. So it's such a privilege to be here and to listen to the Alzheimer's case as well. It's fantastic to be part of it. The big thing for me is arriving in UEFA 2011. I'd heard of Jim. Everyone knew of Jim. And then I got to see him in action in UEFA, and it was stunning to watch him. There's three things, just to build on what David Gill said a while ago, there's three things I think you need to be top at what you do in these corridors of power, as you say. One is knowledge of the subject. So he knew the game, he knew how the game worked, the process and that as well. Secondly, how to communicate, how to talk to people, how to move people when you're trying to get them to make a decision. Jim had that in spades. And the third thing is a network, a trusted network of people. He could pick up the phone to anybody. He could ring the FIFA president, the UEFA president, whenever he wanted. He had this network. He could connect with anyone. So he had all of that. And as David said, the work that he brought, it was an important time at UEFA when you were there. The Youth Amateur Committee evolved a lot of things. And that came from Jim's drive. And again, you shouldn't forget, FIFA, like football, is the biggest sport on the planet. FIFA is the most important sports organisation, you could argue, on the planet. We see it today, every day now it's been spoken about. And Jim, from here, sat on the board that made the decisions for world football. That is an unbelievable achievement, and I think you couldn't underestimate that.
Noel, I would love to wish you well over the course of the next week in this year 150th anniversary year for Wales, but I'd be lying, as you know. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. So nice of you to come and make the trip, Ludovico, all the way from Malta.
Okay.
So good of you to do so. Thank you for being here on Jim's big night.
It is a pleasure.
And
as I told you, it was an honor for me to know Jim, and I've worked with him, and I've learned a lot from him. Let's be honest.
There's bad news because he's planning to retire to Malta. So
no, he can come.
You may see even more of him.
He's always welcome there.
Noel, Ludovico, thank you both very much. Round of applause for our two guests.
I think just after what Joel has said there, I think all of us in this room hope that Northern Ireland can go to Bergamo next Thursday and get a result. But if we don't get that result, I'm sure all of us would hope that Wales do get the result and would qualify for the finals if we don't play them in the finals.
Jim, there's 10
All
people,
the best
there are 10
will.
people in here from Bosnia. You've offended all of them. They want their money back from their raffle. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Wish you all the best for the future.
Right, we're going to move on. Jim, I know we heard a little bit about your football career, but of course, you were a very good cricketer over the years. You were wicket-keeper and captain at Ballymena Cricket Club. Shrewd move, being captain. It meant you couldn't be dropped as wicket-keeper, no matter how many catches you dropped. Do you remember Kieran Morey?
Very well, but he just wasn't the same class.
Yeah, Kieran Morey came to Ballymena. He, for those who aren't familiar with cricket, Kieran Morey was an Indian international cricketer. He played nearly 50 test matches for India. He played nearly 100 one-day internationals for India. He arrives at Ballymena as a wicketkeeper. And guess who's the wicketkeeper when the team's named? Jimmy Boyce. Very shrewd move, Jim. You were always ahead of the curve. You got the chance, of course, to be associated with so many of our great players over the years. And I'm going to invite some of them up now. First of all, I want to hear from one in particular, because we're going to hear a great story about how the World Cup came to Belfast. Put your hands together for former international David Campbell, and also a man who gave Northern Ireland supporters two of the best nights that we'll ever see at Windsor Park, former international manager Laurie Sanchez. David, shooting for Socrates, the movie, you were behind all of that. There was that big night in Belfast, and you wanted the World Cup to be there, and you're thinking, how do I go about this? Tell the story for the people in the room tonight.
Just to put a wee bit of context in it, 40 years ago, I made my debut for Northern Ireland against the best team in the world in 1986 World Cup finals, Brazil. Northern Ireland were the smallest country ever to qualify, and Billy Bingham gave me my debut. And a few years later, we were at a Cannes Film Festival, and I was on this big yacht, I swear to God, and I'm from Eglinton, and I looked around, how the hell have I ever got to this? And this director came up from Cannes, he went, tell me what's your favourite moment in sport? And I said, the World Cup. And he said, ever done that, like a movie or a documentary? Fast forward a wee bit, we went to FIFA, and we said, we're thinking of doing a movie about the Northern Ireland team being the smallest team ever to qualify against the best team in the world. And they said, well, we can't really support, we can blah, blah, blah. Anyway, fast forward again, we started, the director came over and started interviewing all the players. And he said, it's not a documentary, this has to be a movie because the characters, the personalities. At the time, during that World Cup, for about 20 odd days, there was no shootings, no muggings, nothing happened during the Troubles because everyone was interested in football. Anyway, for the premiere of the movie, we wanted one thing. We had it in the waterfront. Thousands of people attended, and we thought, what is the most special thing you could do in Belfast? Jim was vice president of FIFA. We have to have the World Cup trophy, which is valued at £20 million, and it's priceless. So anyway, we spoke to Jim, and we said, Jim, would it be possible, do you think, us and Sepp Blatter, could we have the trophy in Belfast? Where we had the afternoon launch of it, before the movie that night. And he says, where are you having the launch? I said, well, probably we're going to have it in the most bombed hotel in the world, the Europa. And they went, okay. Fast forward again, Jim flies into Belfast City Airport with the World Cup trophy in a box. We get to Belfast, and all of a sudden, the TV cameras, everyone's massive publicity. And Jim says, why don't we just open the box and let all the children in the airport touch and feel it? Well, of course, you can't touch the World Cup unless you're king or queen of your country or you've won it. So next thing, this trophy opens, the box opens, and that afternoon we had the players touching all that. But that night at the waterfront, as I said, to touch it, you have to wear white gloves. And there's an amazing photograph of all the players. Jim brought the trophy, special permission of FIFA, in recognition of not just what he's done in Ireland, but across the world. And it's nearly impossible to have that honour bestowed upon you. It's never happened before. So for one day only, one night only, we had the World Cup trophy in Belfast in recognition of this amazing, amazing gentleman.
The story of how Jim Boyce brought the World Cup to Belfast. Laurie, he brought you to Belfast, and as a result, we had some unbelievable nights at Windsor Park, and 2 of the nights, I mean, Jim, you're on the pitch after the England game and the Spain game. I actually thought you'd played in both matches, to be fair. How much of a part did Jim play in the story, Laurie, of actually bringing you here as manager?
Well, let's talk about that. I've got a story about Jim, so I've got to get this out of the way before I forget it. So we've got a Malta theme going tonight, the gentleman earlier from Malta. So one of my first games away with Northern Ireland was to Malta. Were you there? I don't know if you were there. I know Sammy went, but I went. We're losing 1-0 to Malta, about 150th in the world. So at half-time, I'm away, trying to get my feet under the table. Stephen Beacon's upstairs writing my first obituary. And I have to give the life chat, as we called it, to the players about why are you here, what are you doing this for, we wasting all our time, blah, blah, blah. Come out, get a goal, 1-1. Last minute, I think David Healy must have scored because he was the only person that scored for me. Last minute, someone gives a penalty. I think it might have been Keith Gillespie. Gave a penalty away.
Sent off, I think, as well, was he?
I think he was, wasn't he? You were there, so you remember it. And I'm there on the touchline just praying, please, 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 don't let them score and let Malta beat us. Luckily, Mike Taylor saves it. But the point of the story is not that. At the swimming pool the day before, you've got to remember, young athletes are quite cut. They're all lying around the pool, relaxing at the pool, in their trunks, you know. Then suddenly, Jim walks down. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen Sexy Beast with Ray Winston, that opening scene with the stone that comes down the side of the mountain. Jim has got some sartorial elegance, I'll give him that. But he walks down in these Speedos, or budgie smugglers, as we call them in the UK. Walks all the way around the pool against these sleek-cut young athletes. Not, completely blazing to it. And I remember thinking at the time, this is not a shy president. But the point of that is, you did not need a shy president of the IFA, because the IFA is a really small country, really small association. And without someone that was bigger than the association, you wouldn't have got, for the sake of argument, Germany coming here for the 125th anniversary game for free. In fact, they came here, Jim got them here. I remember they said, you will come, but we want a 24 camera setup. At which point the BBC said, we don't have 24 cameras. So Germany said, don't worry about that, we'll truck them across ourselves. They put 24 cameras around the pitch because that was their setup for internationals. And they played the game for free, and that was because Jim was in charge. So that's what he's brought to Northern Ireland. He brought a persona that was bigger than the association itself. And much as we all take the mick, and we all do take the mick out of his speeches and his glad handing, without that, a lot of what went on during my time and thereafter wouldn't have happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Cabell and Laurie Sanchez. So the music is coming. Just want to get a one word from 3 of our more current internationals, of course, who enjoyed their time when Jimmy was president and a little bit later as well. Put your hands together. He's already been mentioned. Neil Lennon's here tonight, Jim Magilton's here tonight, and David Healy's here tonight. The good news is we have to keep this short. So I'll give you one lash at this each. We'll start furthest away. David, what do you want to say about this man and your memories from the time when you played for Northern Ireland? He was leading the delegation wherever we went.
He was. I think your granddaughter summed it up earlier when she says about the colourful nature of your clubber, let's call it. Hugely humble, hugely supportive as a young player coming into the international setup. These 2 Hallions who used to take all my early money when we used to play in the card school. But Jim was hugely inspirational. Laurie mentioned about the likes of Germany.
he didn't mention we went to the Caribbean. I think Mr. Warner helped us. You'd negotiated a deal and whatever else. I don't know whether the FA seen the complete full package of the money, because
They saw it all but 10 grand, which was a hell of a trip, wasn't it, David?
It certainly was an incredible trip. But more importantly, we woke up every morning. I roomed with Damien Johnson. I think the Caribbean FA had slotted us $100 through the door of the letterbox every morning for your spends for the afternoon. That wouldn't have happened without somebody like Jim Boyce. I would also like to mention, it would be remiss of me, to when I first came in to Linfield as a manager, you were, again, hugely supportive in your words, very kind, generous with your time. You weren't so generous. I hope you were a better ball boy when you were 7, because you didn't move to get a Linfield ball for a throw-in when you were certainly in your 70s. The old fence, those that can remember at Solitude, Jim used to sit down, the dugout was a little bit further down. You certainly moved quick enough when the ball went into the grass when it was a Cliftonville throw-in. I never once seen you move to get a Linfield throw-in, Jim, so thank you for that.
Jim, you remember him from your time in the international scene, of course, and now you see him so much at Solitude, now the Cliftonville manager.
I do. And James presented me with my 50th cap. We were in Malta. And Malta at that time was 90 degrees. So I was being presented with my 50th cap, but it was delayed because Jim had to go up to his room and get his sheepskin rug. And then he came down with the sheepskin rug and then presented me with a medallion for the 50th cap. But I have to say, to think that someone has been around a football club for 70 years, that is an incredible feat. I've been here for 2.5 and look at the state of me. So you only have to look at, but to think it's someone who has dedicated his life to football, and the people that are here to celebrate this man's life, his family are here obviously, but the unbelievable people that are here to say thank you to someone who has dedicated his life not only to football but to everything that it means to him. It's a celebration of his life, and I'm delighted to call him my friend.
Neil, you really wanted to be here tonight. Why was it important to be here for Jim tonight? Last word to you.
Well, I just think Jim's an amazing ambassador for Northern Irish football. And everyone talks about the administration side of it, but for me, he was always a human being first and foremost, and he just loved it more than anyone when Northern Ireland won the games. I always remember him just being so happy and ebullient for all the players. I remember my first trip, it was 1994, pre-World Cup, and we were playing in America. We played Colombia and Mexico, and I was a young player at Crewe Alexander, and Jim was very supportive. But every day, as Sophia touched on and David touched on, he had sartorial elegance, and he'd be in pastel colours every day. And every day in Miami, the tan got deeper and deeper. And then when we played the Colombians, the Colombian people sort of took a real shine to him, to the point where I think they mistook him for Pablo Escobar at one stage. Anyway, I digress. I had 5 or 6 years. It was a privilege to play for Northern Ireland, and Jim was a huge part of. It was almost like a family. You had these guys, and I worked with some great players and great managers, and unfortunately didn't get the chance to play on the lorry, which would have loved when you think of the results that Lorry got. But Jim was always there, always a constant, and he still is. The last time I saw him, I was at the Northern Ireland Under-21 game against Germany, and with young Shea Kearney, who have signed from Cliftonville, playing, and I went over to watch him. And unfortunately for me, Jim pulled me before the game. And by the time he had finished, the game was over. I missed my flight to Glasgow, and my kids were going through university.
You were lucky it was only one of Jim's brief stories, weren't you? It was Jim, I mean, Neil, a fine example of one of those who's made the effort to be here tonight. We've heard from so many guests. We need to give you the last word, and remember, George Jones is outside ready to play.
Well, let me say I couldn't have three better people sitting on the stage with me to finish tonight. David and I go back a long time. Some of the abuse that fella takes from some people, I think, is unbelievable for somebody that's won 5 or 6 doubles.
Do you mean at Windsor or at Solitude?
I mean at Windsor.
Oh, Windsor.
No, he don't. Hey, come here.
Sorry.
He would tell you himself.
Solitude.
He comes up to Solitude, and I have to be fair to the people at Cliftonville Football Club. He always gets a very good welcome, and he's very welcome.
I was only joking, Jim.
He's very welcome. No, but being serious about this, David Healy would tell you he's no problem coming to Solitude. It's great for David to be here. Jim Magilton, I think Cliftonville Football Club are very, very lucky that they have someone of the calibre of Jim, someone who has brought on so many young players for Northern Ireland, who has obviously managed at the highest level in British football. And I think they're very lucky for a part-time club that Jim is doing such a job as he's doing at Cliftonville Football Club.
I just hope he doesn't ruin your 75th anniversary by not winning the Irish Cup.
Well, he's told me, and I have it down in writing, he's told me he's going to win the Irish Cup, so
right,
we'll see what happens.
Okay.
But let me tell you something which I'm genuinely serious about. I was watching the television, and I heard that Neil had been made captain of the Northern Ireland team. I think we were playing, was it Malta? It was Cyprus, the following night anyway.
Cyprus.
And I got a phone call from David Bowen on my way to the ground to tell me about the dreadful death threat that Neil received from some idiot who obviously, hopefully, that type of thing will never happen again. But Neil had taken a lot of abuse from these idiots. Unfortunately, we still have few of them, and we still have some of them in Northern Ireland. But it was one of the saddest days of my life when I got that phone call. Now, I spoke to Neil, I went over to Scotland and I saw him when he obviously decided that, look, enough's enough. He didn't want to play anymore. And I was determined, and Neil will tell you, I was determined to stop talking about this, that something had to be done about it. And I remember going and meeting with the Northern Ireland supporters clubs up in the Wellington Park Hotel, and one of my best friends is Jackie Fullerton, who sadly is not here tonight because Jackie's health at the moment is not too good. But Jackie said, Jim, you're in for a rough ride here tonight. And I said, look, would you let me do just one thing? Would you let me speak to these people first of all? And I went in and I said, I'm not going to change as a person. Nobody's going to change me as a person. If you weren't from your religion and you were playing in the Northern Ireland shirt and going out and giving 100%, would you want to hear what's going on and being shouted at? Remember, the crowd at that time were down to 4,000, Joel. We were lucky to get 4,000 into Windsor Park. And I said, this has to change. I said, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to change, but you're going to have to change, and you're going to have to change it. And I am delighted to say that at the end of the night, I was sitting at the table, and these 5 guys approached me. I'll be honest with you, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But they came and held their hand out, and they said, fair play to you, Boyce. At least you're man enough to come and talk to us tonight. We will change this. I'll not use the language that they used towards me, but they said, we will change this. And I said, well, you're going to have to change it, because if you don't change it, there will nobody come to Windsor Park. And I think now most people will agree it is a changed place. Now it's delightful to go along and to not hear the nonsense and the sectarian singing, which I had never had any time for in my life. And I have to say that one of the saddest days of my life, whenever Neil decided that he'd had enough, but I fully understand it. But we've remained firm friends from that day to this, and I'm absolutely delighted that he's taken the time to be here tonight.
Anything you want to say, Neil, quickly, in terms of Jim as the person at that time? Because you got to see Jim.
No, I do. I remember taking the call, and I went, yeah, your man. I went, make sure you don't miss him, because I want to play more. I want more caps.
Got you a few more caps, didn't it?
There's tips in the paper that he's going to be the next Northern Ireland manager. I don't know it's between him or Healy, but it's just, they're both...
Yeah, you have more chance of being the Northern Ireland manager.
I think with Patrick Nelson there, you're probably right.
We got there eventually. Yes. Well, there we go. Neil, big semi-final coming up. Last word to you.
I have a big semi-final up.
I know we don't care about you, Jim. It's not all about you. It's only he's our guest.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, look at what you had to put up with for years whenever you were with him in squads.
It was torture. It was him, Ian Dowie, and then we'd always celebrate if he won at Bob Cratchit's back in the day. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, if you saw Jim Magilton dancing, I thought he was having a stroke at one stage. I'd also like to pay a tribute to David. At a time when we couldn't buy a goal in the Northern Ireland team, David Healy broke through, and he was just phenomenal, Jim, wasn't he? Just phenomenal. I'll always remember playing against Denmark at Windsor Park, and the game was quite tight, and Peter Schmeichel's in goal, and I'm going back 96, 97. He's the best goalkeeper in the world, and out of nowhere, he hits a 30-yarder into the top corner, and I'm just stood behind it going, fucking hell.
He plays for us.
Yeah. We've got a goal scorer, Jim made a run, which thankfully David ignored again and stuck it in the top. But it was just great days. We weren't the best. I mean, Michael's done phenomenals with getting to the Euros in 2016, and it's going to be difficult in Italy, but it's not insurmountable. So the country's in rude health, and in terms of coaches as well. You think of like these guys, you think of Stephen Robinson doing a great job now, and Grant McCann. I'm sure there's others I can think about, Kieran McKenna. So this is what we have learned, from coming through the system, if you want to call it that. There's that inner strength that, we always want to put one over on the English or the Scottish or the Welsh. We always want to fight our own corner. And I think the guys have done that. And it's been a privilege to be a part of it. And Jim's been at the forefront of that for a long, long time.
Well, listen, Neil, Jim, David, great to have you here tonight. There's only one thing left to be said, Jim. Jim Boyce, this is your football life. We hope you've enjoyed tonight. And a big thank you from not just those in the room who were able to speak tonight, from everybody who was here, wanted to be a part of their night. Thank you so much for 75 years dedicated to football. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Boyce.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a song you can all join in because we've got to get the legs into the air. But this one, you'll know what it is as soon as you hear the introduction. Doesn't need any introduction whatsoever, so it's going to get none. Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray around the very heart of it. New York, New York. I want to wake up in the city that doesn't sleep, to find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. These little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it on old Broadway. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. in the city that doesn't sleep. To find out king of the hill, head of the list, cream of the crop and the top of the heap.
All together.
Are you ready with the legs? Can you still get them into the air? Keep the party clean. These little town homesick blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it on old Broadway. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, York, Thank you very much. Where it began, I can't begin to know it, but then I know it's growing strong. Was in the spring, and spring became the summer. Who'd have believed you'd come along?
Get the hands up, please.
Come on. Touching hands.
Everybody, come on.
Reaching out. Touching me. Touching you. Sweet Caroline. Oh, oh, oh. Your times never seem so good.
So good, so good, so good.
I've been inclined to believe they never would, and now I look at the night, and it don't seem so lonely. We fill it up with only two. And when I hurt runs off my shoulder, how can I hurt when I'm holding you? Warm,
get the hands up,
touching warm, reaching out, touching me, touching you. Come on, let me hear ya. Sweet Caroline, your times never seem so good.
So good, so good, so good.
I've been inclined to believe they never would.
Are you ready? Get the hands up now.
Sweet Caroline, your times never seem so good.
So good, so good, so good.
I've been inclined to believe they never would. Sweet Caroline, good night. Thank you very much.
Give Trevor a round of applause, please.
Enjoy the rest
Come
of
on.
your evening.